You prayed for change, but God gave you silence. You begged for answers, but heaven seemed to close its ears. You cried out for relief, and the echo of your own voice was all that returned. In those moments, when your heart feels abandoned and your faith feels fragile, you might wonder if you've done something wrong, if maybe there are habits in your life that have created distance between you and the divine, if perhaps your actions have stirred something in heaven that feels like anger. But what if I told you that recognizing these patterns isn't about condemnation? What if understanding what grieves the heart of God is actually the first step toward the deepest healing you've ever experienced? Because sometimes the very things we think are protecting us are actually preventing the breakthrough we've been praying for. Tonight, we're going to explore 5 habits that create distance between your soul and your Creator. Not to shame you, but to set you free. Not to condemn you, but to bring you closer to the peace you've been seeking. Because when we understand what separates us, we can finally understand what connects us. The first habit that creates distance is when we allow anger to take root and grow wild in our hearts. Not the momentary flash of frustration that comes and goes like a summer storm, but the kind of anger that settles in like winter. The kind that builds walls instead of bridges. The kind that rehearses hurt instead of releasing it. You know this anger. It's the resentment you carry from last year's betrayal. It's the bitterness that colors every conversation about that person who wounded you. It's the rage that feels justified because, after all, they were wrong and you were right. But here's what happens when anger becomes our permanent resident instead of our temporary visitor. It doesn't just hurt the people around us. It separates us from the very source of healing we desperately need. Think of Cain, walking in the fields with murder in his heart before it ever reached his hands. His anger began with comparison, grew through pride, and ended in tragedy. Not because God didn't warn him, but because he chose to feed the fury instead of finding the peace that was always within reach. That same progression happens in our hearts when we nurture anger instead of releasing it. We rehearse the offense until it becomes our identity. We practice the pain until it becomes our purpose. But anger doesn't have to be your story. Every moment you choose forgiveness over fury, you're choosing connection over separation. Every time you release the right to be right, you're creating space for something greater to grow in your heart. The second habit that creates distance is pride that masquerades as self-protection. This isn't the healthy confidence that comes from knowing your worth. This is the defensive wall that keeps everyone at arm's length, including heaven itself. It's the voice that whispers, "I don't need anyone," when your heart is breaking from loneliness. It's the posture that says, "I can handle this myself," when your soul is crying out for help. Pride tells us that asking for help is weakness, that admitting we're wrong is defeat, that showing our true hearts is dangerous. So we build these beautiful, polished versions of ourselves and wonder why we feel so empty inside. We present perfection to the world and then feel confused when no one really knows us. We wear masks so convincing that we forget what our real faces look like. But here's the gentle truth that pride doesn't want you to hear. Vulnerability isn't your enemy. It's your doorway to connection. Every time you choose authenticity over image management, you're choosing intimacy over isolation. Every moment you let your guard down with safe people, you're practicing the very posture that draws heaven closer. The third habit is the subtle art of modern idolatry. Not the obvious kind with golden statues and burning incense, but the everyday kind that happens when we make good things into ultimate things. When our careers become our identity instead of our calling. When our relationships become our salvation instead of our blessing. When our dreams become our gods instead of our gifts. You might not think you're guilty of idolatry, but consider this. What consumes your thoughts when you lie awake at 3 in the morning? What do you check first when you wake up? What would devastate you if it disappeared tomorrow? Those answers reveal what might have quietly taken the throne of your heart without you even realizing it. This isn't about feeling guilty for loving your family or being passionate about your work. This is about recognizing when those good things have become ultimate things. When we find ourselves anxious, controlling, or desperate about anything other than our connection to the divine, We might be dealing with an idol we didn't know we had built. The beautiful truth is that when we put first things first, everything else finds its proper place. When heaven holds the highest seat in our hearts, our relationships become healthier, our work becomes more fulfilling, and our dreams become more aligned with divine purpose. The fourth habit that creates distance is the comparison trap that steals our peace and poisons our praise. It's the voice that whispers, "Why does everyone else seem blessed while you're still waiting?" It's the scrolling through social media that leaves you feeling less than instead of grateful for what is. It's the measuring your behind the scenes against everyone else's highlight reel. Comparison is the thief of contentment, but it's also the killer of intimacy with heaven. When we're constantly looking sideways at other people's lives, we miss the unique story being written in our own. When we're focused on what we lack, we become blind to what we've been given. But the deepest wound of comparison isn't what it does to our relationships with others. It's what it does to our relationship with the divine. When we're constantly measuring our journey against someone else's timeline, we miss the sacred lessons hidden in our own season. We become so focused on why their prayers seem answered while ours echo in silence that we forget to listen for the whispers of wisdom meant specifically for us. Every time you choose gratitude over comparison, you're choosing intimacy over isolation. Every moment you celebrate another's blessing without diminishing your own worth, you're creating space for your own breakthrough to unfold in divine timing. The fifth habit that creates distance is the restless pursuit of control disguised as faith. It's the prayers that sound like demands and the surrender that comes with conditions attached. It's the voice that says, "I trust you, God, but here's my timeline." It's the faith that believes in miracles but insists they happen according to our schedule and our specifications. This kind of control masquerades as spiritual maturity, but it's actually spiritual anxiety. We think we're being faithful by mapping out exactly how heaven should move in our lives. We create detailed plans and then wonder why peace feels so elusive when things don't unfold according to our expectations. We hold our dreams so tightly that we squeeze the life out of them before they have a chance to breathe. But here's the gentle invitation that control doesn't want you to accept. True faith isn't about knowing the outcome. It's about trusting the author. Every time you choose surrender over strategy, you're choosing connection over control. Every moment you release your grip on how things should happen, you create space for something better than you could have orchestrated to unfold. Maybe that's why your prayers have felt unanswered lately. Not because heaven isn't listening, but because the divine response doesn't match your expected timeline. Maybe the silence isn't rejection, but redirection toward something more beautiful than what you originally requested. Think about it this way. If you could see the full story of your life like reading the final pages of a book, would you still worry about the chapter you're in right now? If you knew that every delay was actually divine alignment, every closed door was protection, and every unanswered prayer was being answered in a way you couldn't yet comprehend, would you hold your plans a little more loosely? These 5 habits don't define you, but recognizing them can transform you. The anger that felt justified, the pride that felt protective, the idols that felt necessary, the comparison that felt natural, and the control that felt faithful. Each one was a wall you built thinking it would keep you safe, not realizing it was keeping heaven at a distance. But here's the beautiful truth about divine love. It doesn't abandon you because of your patterns. It meets you in them. Every moment you choose to release anger instead of rehearsing it, you're choosing connection. Every time you let your guard down instead of building it higher, you're creating space for intimacy. Every day you put first things first instead of making good things ultimate. You're aligning your heart with heaven's rhythm. The silence you thought meant absence was actually presence waiting patiently for you to clear the noise. The delay you interpreted as rejection was redirection towards something more beautiful than you originally imagined. The unanswered prayers weren't ignored. They were being answered in ways that required you to grow into the person who could receive what was always meant for you. Tonight, as you close your eyes, remember this. You're not too broken for divine love. You're not too proud for divine grace. You're not too controlling for divine peace. You're simply human, learning to walk closer to the heart that never stopped beating for you. If this message reached you at the right time, take it as a quiet sign. Your waiting isn't wasted. You're being prepared for something sacred. Write Amen in the comments if you receive this message with faith. And subscribe for more reflections like this. Let's keep walking this path of peace and purpose together.